My dear brothers and sisters, it is again my great privilege to speak about Our Lady and her Divine Son. I wish to welcome, on behalf of the rector of the shrine here, the many pilgrims, Vietnamese pilgrims, who have come from Minneapolis. Today we are nearing the conclusion of a symposium on Mary Coredemptrix. And I chose to celebrate today the Mass of Mary, Mother and Mediatrix of Grace. I'd like to share with you once again the opening prayer of today's Mass, because it speaks so beautifully about what we have been talking about for the past 2 days. Sometimes we don't always listen carefully. Some do. But let me read this again because it is a beautifully composed prayer. Lord our God, in your eternal wisdom and love, you chose the Blessed Virgin Mary to be the mother of the author of all grace, and as his companion in bringing about the mystery of our redemption. Grant that she may obtain for us graces in abundance and lead us at last to the harbor of eternal salvation. Note that Mary is referred to as the mother of the author of grace. Grace is divine life in our souls. It is the very life of God. It is supernatural life, risen life, the life that never dies. And Jesus, by what he did on Calvary, brought about that life. Now notice that Mary is referred to as his companion in bringing about the mystery of our redemption. She is not the source of our redemption, but she is the companion of the Redeemer, the new Eve, the one who stands by the side of the new Adam as he hangs upon the cross, the new tree of life. She is his companion in bringing about the mystery of our redemption. That's what we have been considering from various perspectives already in 6 different conferences. And then there is the petition. Grant that she may obtain for us graces in abundance, and lead us at last to the harbor of eternal salvation. That she may obtain for us graces in abundance. Mary, then, is not the source of grace, that is Jesus, but she is the channel of grace, the channel through which Jesus came to us, and the channel through which the life that was won for us by Jesus on the cross comes to us. The Mediatrix, of all graces. Perhaps the most beautiful image or icon that shows this is that which Saint Catherine Labouré saw in Paris in the chapel of the Rue du Bac of the Daughters of Charity of Saint Vincent de Paul. It is the image which is seen on the miraculous medal. Mary's hands are extended, and from her hands we see rays, the rays representing the graces that she can obtain for us. First of all, there is sanctifying grace, which comes to us in the sacrament of baptism and is renewed in us when needed in the sacrament of penance. And even if we are not in mortal sin, happily, when we go to confession, we also receive an increase of sanctifying grace and the actual graces that we need to continue living the life of Jesus. Saint Catherine Labouré relates that she saw on Our Lady's fingers many rings from which gems emitted these rays. And she noted that there were some rings with gems that didn't emit any rays. And she asked Our Lady about this and was told, "These represent the graces that no one asks for." The graces of the redemption wrought by Jesus in union with Mary are infinite. They cannot be measured. As the love of God is infinite, so are the graces that come from Him. We at times are hesitant to ask for the many graces that we need in our daily lives. When we fail to be patient, to be loving, to be kind, let us recognize that we need to turn to Mary to ask for those graces which come from the pierced heart of her Son. The gospel proposed today for this Mass of Mary, Mediatrix, Mother and Mediatrix, is the gospel of Cana, well known to us. And yet we can always draw new treasures out of the Gospels. First of all, we notice Mary's discretion. She doesn't demand. She simply approaches Jesus and says they have no wine. Now we know that wedding celebrations among the Jewish people were often, especially in small villages, the greatest celebrations of the year. And basically the wedding could go on for even a week, or at least the celebration thereof. As long as the musicians could keep playing and there was still food and wine. When the wine has run out, that basically means we're done. And to save this young couple from embarrassment, Mary approaches Jesus. She is always discreet, but she notices everything. It seems as if Jesus rebukes her, and he calls her woman. And I recall as a little boy the good sisters who taught me saying, well, in those days it was ordinary for children to address their mother as woman. But I've since discovered that wasn't the case. Jesus used the word woman to remind us of that first woman who disobeyed God. And on that occasion when God confronted Adam and Eve and the serpent, he began with the serpent, and he said to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and hers. You will strike at her heel while she crushes your head. That image we see also on the miraculous medal and the statue that comes from it that we often call Our Lady of Grace. It was Jesus who conquered the serpent on Calvary, along with Mary, his mother. And it falls to her as the new woman to crush the head of the serpent. We find a very similar image in the last book of the Bible, just as we found that in the first. There it is in the book of Revelation. And John says he saw a woman clothed with the sun, with 12 stars around her head, standing on the moon. And there again we see the image of Mary triumphant because of the triumph that she won in union with Jesus, the woman clothed with the sun. So when he speaks to her here, he does not call her by her name, but he calls her woman, because she is the new woman, and he will call her that again on Calvary. Mary doesn't remonstrate with Jesus. She doesn't argue with him. She simply contents herself by saying to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." So she says that to us. Do whatever he tells you. She never draws us to herself for the sake of herself, but always for the sake of her Son. And there, this miracle, what St. John calls a sign, launches him into his messianic mission, which will end on Calvary. He says here, the hour has not yet come, but by doing what he does, the hour is hastened, the hour of Calvary. And on this occasion, what happens? There is provided a great abundance of wine, not just ordinary wine, but the best wine. And so the head waiter says, "You've kept the best wine until now," to the bridegroom. Jesus is the bridegroom. And at every celebration of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, he provides us with the best bread and wine, with the gift of himself. And John Paul II, in his last encyclical on the Eucharist, said something so extraordinary that I think almost no one has heard it. He said that at every celebration of the Mass, Jesus renews what he did on Calvary, and therefore, as Mary was present on Calvary, so she is present in every celebration of the Mass. She is not present under the form of bread and wine as Jesus is, but she is there as our mother. And he went on to say that at every celebration of the Mass, Jesus says to us, "Behold your mother," just as he spoke to John. How blessed we are in this beautiful sanctuary to have this wonderful image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which very happily presides over this sanctuary. And there we see her image that reminds us of that image from the book of Revelation, the woman clothed with the sun. Just as she spoke to Juan Diego on that occasion, so she speaks to us, even by her image. She is the channel of every grace, because she won for us grace with Jesus on Calvary. She is not the source, but the channel. And surely as she is present to us, submissive to Jesus as she was at Cana and Calvary, so she is with us in every Mass. Let us not hesitate to ask her for every need, because we live in very evil times, and evil has penetrated to very high places, both in the world and sadly even in our church. But we know that the woman will conquer, that she will crush the head of Satan. But for that, we also need to pray, to beg her intercession and her mediation. And the more we do so, the more we will experience every grace that we stand in need of, and that the Church and the world also stand in need of. O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee.